Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today I will be going through 10 new decks that you can play tomorrow. But not right now. But you can play them tomorrow, and we have done at least one for each of the champions. I was building these today with the help of my stream. If you were there, thank you very much. If you weren't, then, come by tomorrow. The link will be in the description where you can go and follow and, make sure you don't miss it. I'll be playing probably one of these decks. I don't know which one yet because there's a lot of good choices to be had. But we're going to go through them, but there is a couple things I need to mention just before we begin. Mobalytics isn't perfect right now. It hasn't quite figured out the dual region things 100% of the time. So there is some instances of where cards, might not be the exact version. There's one that I know of where Fizz is meant to be Teemo. And there could be some others as well that I can't think about right now. But just know that if you are like, that doesn't make any sense to put that champion in there, it's probably not meant to be that champion, and it's probably a champion of a similar mana cost. But I think most of them are correct now. I think it's just Fizz for Teemo in one of the decks. And then also, there's this card that was revealed. That is a real card, by the way. And it's not part of Mobalytics, and it hasn't been on Mobalytics yet, so you can't deck build with it on Mobalytics. It's called Pokestick. It's in Bandle Tree. It's a 2-mana fast speed spell. Deal 1 to anything, draw 1. The card is nuts. It's the Bandle City Nuts card, the 2-mana crazy good spell. Well, this is the one for Bandle City because, yeah, this is a really good effect. So this is in there as Trixie Tentacles. If you see Trixie Tentacles, which is one of those cards that makes your opponent discard a card, and, you're like, wow, Chris really loves this Trixie Tentacles card. No, I don't. It's meant to be Pokestick. It's a fill-in because this card is not on Mobalytic yet either. So if Trixie Tentacles is in there, it means use Pokestick. This card is nuts. This card is really, really good. So with that said, oh, and also deck codes and deck links all in the description. So, if you want just one of them, that's fine. If you want all 10, that's also fine. So it's all fine, right? So with that said, let's dive into our first deck. So let's take a look at our first deck, and that is the Sun Disc, and it is new Sun Disc. And it is a Xerath Nasus list for the Sun Disc with 1 action thrown in just kind of as a good card, really. And you'll notice there is one card of a different color. That's Bomber Twins. I'm pretty, this is dual region. I'm pretty sure it still counts. Buried Sun Disc says all of your cards are Shuriman. It is Shuriman. It's not solely Shuriman, but it is also Shuriman. So I think this counts. But if it doesn't, then obviously take this card out. But I think it counts, so I put that in there as well. What's the idea of this deck? Well, it's very simple, actually. Essentially, we have a landmark deck. We have a landmark deck, essentially, and I think that this will be the best way of playing Sun Disc, not only because both Xerath and Nasus will win you the game at their level 3, very definitely. They win 100% of the time, don't need to worry about it. As soon as you've got the Sun Disc off, you pretty much always should win. I can't think of many situations where you'll lose. And so, that's all good. That's all great. But why these two? What's the rest of the deck doing? How are we winning the game? Well, as I said, it's kind of a landmark deck. And essentially, you're using the combination of both, basically the combination of Roiling Sands. This is your main one. With Rockhopper and with Unraveled Earth, you get Roiling Sands. And they're both landmarks that quickly destroy themselves, which help level up Xerath. But they also give things vulnerable, and those things can be slayed, which helps Nasus. Xerath also deals damage to the enemy units, which also counts as a slay. So that will help level up Nasus as well. And you're starting to get the point, right? That these two have a nice synergy together. What I think also is they're kind of playing at the same sort of speed. They kind of want... These are the two that I think fit speed best. Azir is kind of off on his own. He's playing way quicker, in most of his decks than all the other Renekton, Xerath, and Nasus. Renekton is a bit flexible, but kind of needs that kind of all-in support to try and level Renekton as quick as possible, and I feel it's a bit unreliable. These two, however, I feel like have reliable level-ups that you can definitely trigger. Once Nasus is a 10-10, your opponent is probably going to struggle to kill him. So they both have level ups that you can trigger quite well, and they both play at a similar speed. They both kind of want to be winning the game, like on turn 7 and 8. You know, and that I think is what is important. That finally we have these champions that can fuse together in a Sun Disc deck, and you can build the deck at the same speed. Whereas I feel like all the champions before were trying to pull the deck at their own speeds, and so it didn't necessarily work. But I think with Xerath and Nasus, we finally fixed that problem, and we can just start going in for the good synergies. You know, we can go in for, you know, all of the landmark synergies we want. We, of course, you know, can still afford to play good cards, like, you know, you might have heard of this card, Merciless Hunter, that's pretty good. That's still in there. We have Waste Walker, which is just an insane card with things like Unraveled Earth and Rockhopper. You know, you get this, like, 5/5 Overwhelm for 3 mana. Obviously, really good. We just have a bunch of nice synergies, and, you know, we can just, you know, start buffing up our champions with Golden Ambassador, and Herald of the Magus will give them Overwhelm as well, which of course for Nasus, getting 2/2 and Overwhelm is pretty good, you know, and by pretty good I mean insanely good, because obviously it will help level up Nasus quicker, but also giving Nasus Overwhelm is pretty good. So with that all said, I feel like this deck, you know, works pretty well together. It feels a lot more cohesive than Sun Disc decks have before. God, that's hard to say. And I just feel like, you know, that this, you know, we now have enough kind of good cards in Shurima, of course, but now also that the speed of the deck can be, you know, sort of coherent, whereas I feel like before it was a bit too all over the place, but now I feel like it all makes sense, and I feel like this will be the best Sun Disc deck going forward. And importantly, unlike Azir, the level 3 Nasus and Xerath will win you the game straight away, which I think is important as well. Next up, we have a Poppy deck, and a lot of Poppy decks are going to go in the elusive version, and this one I wanted to throw in a bit of a curveball. You know me, I don't like to go with like what everyone else is doing, and sure, you can build Poppy as an elusive deck, and, you know, sure, you can, you know, I mean, even with the Sun Disc, you know, I think most people wouldn't have expected that when they saw the Sun Disc deck that I just showed you as well. And quite a few of these different decks are going to probably go in slightly different directions to you thought. Some not so much, but others will. And this is one that I think still will be very successful, though. I think Poppy was the best champion that was revealed. Mainly, not even because Poppy is, like, insane when she's leveled up or anything like that. You know, she's actually quite difficult to level up, but I don't think it matters. It just really doesn't matter, because Poppy, I think, just is an insane card in her level 1 form. And, you know, I've combined Poppy with another champion that is, like, probably the best champion in the game that follows a similar pattern. Insane level 1 form. Barely levels up, really ever, but just gives you so much value from the level 1 that who cares? You know, and so I thought, well, that's a nice pairing, isn't it? Let's just do that. And then we have a bunch of units. Now, why have I gone Noxus over, say, Elusives or anything else? Well, Noxus has a couple things going for it. One, it has a ton of good 1-drops. Good, aggressive 1-drops. That's a good start, right? That's kind of what we want for Poppy. We want to spread out as wide as we can, give as many different things, buffs as we can, and then just smack our opponents in the face for a lot of damage. So we have, you know, good 1-drops. We also have House Spider, which is a great 2-drop for that strategy as well, of spreading out multiple bodies again on turn 2. But we also have cards like Arena Battlecaster and Crowd Favorite that very much also play into the same strategy that Poppy is. Arena Battlecaster, of course, again, wants you to go really wide. Crowd Favorite wants you to go really wide. So there is an inherent built-in synergy here between all of these Noxian cards and Poppy and Demacia. We also, you know, the only spells we're running are Ranger's Resolve, you know, to keep our things alive, potentially, make, you know, potentially get in insane trades, because we do want to go really wide, and Relentless Pursuit to just help us win the game. And we have Stony Suppressor. Now, some of you might be looking at Stony Suppressor and thinking, well, I get that you've got no spells, but I think, you know, when you look at decks like Nami coming out, and, you know, even the old decks, you know, Lee Sin or anything like that, Stony Suppressor is really good against them, and we barely have any spells to hit. So it's no big deal to us, and, you know, once we've buffed up Stony Suppressor with something like Poppy, then it's going to be even more difficult for our opponent to remove it, and, you know, we're going to get a lot more benefit than they are from all of the spells costing 1 more. So, you know, it seems like a pretty good card, and also is another cheap unit for us to just throw in. And yeah, I feel like this deck is going to be really good. Will it be the best Poppy deck? Maybe, maybe not. You know, it's possible that Elusives could be better, but as soon as everyone starts playing Elusives, you know, elusives stop being good, and this deck will beat it. If everyone else is just playing elusives, then you're better off running this list, because you'll just have slightly bigger units than them that can just hit them quicker than they can hit you. So yeah, I really like this list, and I think it will be quite enjoyable to beat down on some elusives with it. Moving on to the third deck. This is the one where Fizz is meant to say Teemo. Okay, so Fizz, swap for Teemo in your mind. Think about that, and if you are using this list, make sure Teemo swapped with Fizz, because this is a Bandle Tree list. But again, you'll notice that there might be something a bit weird about it. You know, you're only running 2 Bandle Trees, like what's going on? Well, essentially, in my mind, Bandle Tree is great as a kind of side win con. You know, why do we need to go all in on Bandle Tree when we could just make a deck that could be pretty decent and win us the game anyway, and then as a backup plan, we have the Bandle Tree as a kind of second win condition? Let me explain. So, we have a bunch of 1-drops in the deck. Obviously, Teemo, not Fizz. Correct Shot Corsair, Proto Poro, what is it? Mariah Warden will summon a 1-cost follower. Petty Officer will give you 1-cost followers. Double Trouble will give you 1-cost followers as well. This, again, is meant to be the new spell. Again, Trixie Tentacles is this, don't forget. And so, we essentially have a bunch of 1-cost followers. So, by thinking about that and thinking about what we could do about that, I thought, well, we can go in for this 1-cost follower idea, and then also just use Bandle Tree as a kind of backup. We also are using Poppy as well. Of course, Poppy gives us the extra region. Teemo would as well. So we know we have, obviously, Bilgewater and Bandle City are a given. We also then get Piltover and Zorn and Demacia from our 2 champions. And then if we go down the list, we've got Freljord in there. We've got Bandle Commando giving us an Owlcat. That's Ionia in there, which is also a 1-drop and therefore also will count. We have Bomber Twins giving us Shurima. We have Loping Telescope giving us Targon. We have Bandle City Mare, obviously, will give us a double region 1. We have Tenor of Terror giving us Shadow Isles as well. And then we have, obviously, all of our spells and creation of random 1-cost, which could also give us enough to get us to 10. Obviously, we have 9 of 10 in the deck. The one that we are missing is Noxus, but I think that that's fine. And I think also one thing you shouldn't underestimate is, yes, we can push a lot of damage with our 1-cost allies having extra attack with Taskmaster and whatnot, but also it's a great defensive tool. All of a sudden, our 1-drops that aren't trading with things, all of a sudden might trade with things, and trading with things is good to stall out the game, and therefore give us enough time to have Bandle Tree win us the game as well. So I do think that this is a nice sort of way, you know, not going all in completely on the Bandle Tree, you know, giving us a chance of just hitting our opponent hard enough in the face to win normally, you know, just win with like Poppy and a bunch of small units. Very possible in this deck. Oh, they've stalled us out, we can't do that. Okay, Bandle Tree is a nice backup that, you know, you've got to win the game sometime soon, because we're up to like 7 or 8 already on our regions, and the Bandle Tree is just going to quickly give us those extra 2. And because we have a lot of small units, no matter what the Bandle Tree gives us, hopefully we can then play, assuming it's not like some 9-mana card, in which case we feel pretty sad. On we go to Caitlyn Teemo, and we are in a Bandle City and Piltover and Zorn. So obviously Caitlyn and Teemo, the 2 trap champions. We have Hexcore Foundry in here for the draw. This one is pretty obvious. You know, you guys probably don't need too much explanation of what's going on here. We're playing, you know, a Teemo deck with some traps, and, you know, I have also included some pranks, and I think the pranks will be pretty good. Particularly the +2 cost is absolutely insane, you know, in trying to just have our opponents stall out, you know, keep our opponents at bay for just a little while, so that we can put mushrooms in their deck and, you know, sort of slowly win the game from there. I think that that's a really good way of doing it. Obviously, again, Tentacles isn't Tentacles. You know the drill by now. Lecturing Yordle is a card that I really like. I think that this card can do a lot of damage, and I think Peddler, you know, is still the MVP and is going for that. I went for Ava over I almost said Senna, but it's not Senna, it's Karina. Because I think that this kind of list is more going for sort of the turn like 8 and 9 wins rather than the, you know, turn like 6, 7 wins. So I thought that Ava was slightly better for that, and also will give us puff caps, and of course will synergize with Caitlyn as well and potentially kill more things for us. So I'm all very happy about that. And yeah, I kind of like this list. No rummage or anything like that, and this is important to talk about, I think, because, you know, we don't need a rummage because we actually want to play our mushroom clouds. You know, we actually want to play them. They're not just discard targets in this. We are wanting to play those cards. Here is potentially the most disgusting list of them all, and it is Nami Zoe. Now again, bit of a curveball. Aren't you meant to play Nami with Fizz? What's going on? Where's the Bandle Tree? Well, I don't think you really need to. I think that Nami Zoe probably makes more sense. And if you ever need a reason to believe why, simply look over here and see that all of our spells are in Targon. And what else do you notice about those spells from Targon? They're all just good cards in their own right. And they fit the deck a lot because they either give you spells, cheap spells that give you more spells at burst speed. They're all burst speed, by the way. Hey, that's good with Nami. They either protect your unit, give you extra cards / spells, or draw you a card. Hey, those are all things that we really want to do, and some of them do both, like Pale Cascade. We also have access to cards like Mentor of the Stones, which is going to buff one of our elusives, and then give us 3 free spells that also buff our elusives. Oh, wonderful. We also have Mounted Goat, which does, you know, much the same. Gems are cheap spells that buff our units. Great, that's exactly what we want to be doing. And then, of course, we have the kind of, you know, general package of elusive cards from Bilgewater as well. But we also have Sparklefly, which is definitely the card that is going to win you any sort of mirror matches. You know, if you're playing against a Nami Fizz deck, and you've got Sparklefly and they don't, and your Sparklefly gets big, well, you're going to win because you've got the lifesteal one. It's pretty much as simple as that. If you can buff this up in any kind of mirror, well, good luck to them because, you know, you're the one that's going to be gaining life and they're going to be losing life. And so you're going to be the one that's probably winning. And what also is so important about this is, as I've just mentioned, is the spells create more spells. And I feel like that is what is missing. You know, that is why they printed Ebb and Flow as a card. But that Ebb and Flow, you know, we can do better than Ebb and Flow because we've got Targon. Zoe is better than Fizz. We all know that. We all know that to be true, that Zoe is better than Fizz. Do you want to play a 1-drop that you can attack on turn 1 with, that can create a spell for you for free, that maybe then can create more spells for you? Or do you want to play a 1-drop that doesn't have elusive on turn 1, that you have to play a spell to get elusive with, that then even once you've done that, is just a plain elusive? Or you could play the good one. Play this. This is a good card. These are all really good cards in this list. These are all really good cards in this list. Whereas I feel like with the other version, it's like you're squinting, you're trying to make it make sense. Whereas this, in my mind, it just makes complete sense and will really quite annoy your opponent, I think. On to Darkness with Vinegar and Senna. Darkness, obviously, a archetype that I'm actually pretty hopeful for, and I think will be pretty good overall. Of course, to start off with any Darkness deck, I do just think you Control F, you know, search the Darkness cards, play a bunch of the Darkness cards, you know, do they create Darkness, do they make Darkness better, you know, put them all in. Not that difficult. But once you're there, what do you do then? Well, we've gone for Go Hard, and some people were questioning this in my chat, like, do we really want Go Hard? And I think the answer is yes. And the reason is, one, it has an insane interaction with Senna, of course, at fast speed. The fact that you can play like the 3rd and 4th Go Hards and get a pack your bags for like 1 or 0 mana at fast speed. Yeah, that's pretty good. And another thing is that this deck, you won't be curving out. You know, you won't be playing like Acolyte into like Solari Sentinel, of course, because you can only create a Darkness in hand if you don't already have one. So it's going to be kind of like alternate turns of playing something to get a Darkness, maybe then playing the Darkness that turn, then playing something else again to like get your Darkness back, then playing the Darkness, and then, you know, just keep doing those kind of things. I think that that will often be happening in the game. And that is, you know, pretty good actually, because it means that some people were saying that, you know, oh, we'll ruin our draws with Go Hard, but because we're kind of doing this alternate of like, at first, like, of playing Darkness and then playing like one of our cards and then playing Darkness and then playing one of our cards, and we're kind of like alternating a bit and not, you know, necessarily using all of our cards straight away, because we keep creating those cards and then using them, it means that we can afford to like just get a draw from a Go Hard. you know, we can afford to do that, and that's fine. And it also helps enable things like Senna for the Slay, and things like Buru Sentinel as well for the Slay there. Now, one card that you might be questioning is, okay, the rest of it makes sense, but why Chronicler of Ruin? Well, Chronicler of Ruin is in here because essentially if you read all the Darkness cards, like if you read the 2 Champions, if you read Acolyte, if you read Slarish Sentinel, or Stilted Roadmaker in particular, or Ishtali Sentinel, they all say, when I am summoned, and Chronicler of Ruin will summon them again. So for instance, you play Stilted Roadmaker on 4, you make your Darkness cost 1 less. You play Chronicler of Ruin on it on 5, and then all of a sudden your Darkness now costs 1. And that's really quite good. And it is, you know, with Ishtali Sentinel, you know, imagine you've got like a Darkness, you know, like this with Chronicler of Ruin, you know, copying this effect twice is obviously really good. You know, doing it on either of your champions will get you an extra Darkness if you don't have one, which is great. And yeah, essentially it just works really well with resummoning a bunch of things to make your Darkness more powerful, or getting extra Darknesses again if you didn't already have one. And so I love Chronicler of Ruin in this list as well. And I think, you know, we have the one Ledros just as kind of like ult win con, you know, things have gone wrong. We haven't been able to deal any damage at all. You know, okay, we've got Ledros to sort of bail us out. And then, you know, from like 10 health, hopefully we can kill them with like Vinegar or, you know, or Ishtali Sentinel, something like that. And so I really think that Darkness could be pretty good. And, you know, go hard as well. Obviously the Pack Your Bags kind of turns into like damage to them as well. So I kind of like where the deck is going. We have a lot of stall, we have a nice curve, we have the Darkness, and I think this deck will be pretty good. On to a deck that's this is probably the one that I'm most unsure of how good it will be. You know, some of the lists obviously, like, you know, Bandle Tree or whatever, I don't think will be great. I thought that, you know, the Darkness deck will be pretty good if I had to guess, but this one has a range of outcomes, and I'm not quite sure exactly where it falls. But it is obviously the Sion deck with Draven, and with one Vi as well, because giving Vi Overwhelm, hey, that's pretty good. And so obviously you know, I think that this is pretty much the only way you can run this deck, you know, with Piltover and Zorn, with all of the discard, as you would expect. And so we have a bunch of discard, and, you know, it's kind of similar to that Ezreal Draven shell, but obviously we've just gone in a slightly different direction with it. But we have kept some of the old tools like Tri-Beam, which you might be a bit surprised at. But when you look at it, we have still a lot of 3-drops. And guess what? Tri-Beam is, you know, still good. It's as simple as that, you know. We buff up the Tri-Beam to get to like 4 or 5, you know. It counts as summoning power for Sion's Overwhelm, Sion's level up, sorry. And so, you know, it all works. We have some burst speed discard here. You know, we have basically plenty of draw because, you know, we want to like discard these cards already. So, you know, cards like Zornite Urchin and Sump Dredger and Rummage, you know, when you're discarding a Fallen Rider or something, it's basically a free draw, which obviously feels really good. And yeah, I just feel like this whole deck is just pretty good. You know, you have plenty of draw, you have, you know, a nice mid-range kind of game plan. You're going to slowly chip away at your opponent, and instead of, you know, relying on Ezreal and having a bunch of those spells in there, instead you're just going to rely on Sion or Vi with the Overwhelm to kind of punch through and get your final damage. And to me, that's pretty good. On to a Tristana deck, and Tristana is probably the champion that I'm sort of like, oh god, I don't know. You know, Tristana is one of those that I feel like will be much better towards the end of the Bandle City expansion rather than right now, because we just, it seems, don't quite have enough, you know, multi-region followers to make Tristana work. Maybe that's just me, but Tristana is, you know, as I say, just lacking perhaps the synergy, but she can become a pretty big threat on her own. We have teamed her up with Poppy because I think that makes the most sense. I think Tristana is a pretty aggressive champion in all. So essentially, of course, we've gone for like the dual region cards. Of course, Hungry Owlcat counts as a dual region card. We've got Bomber Twins, we've got Protoporo, Loping Telescope, the Bandle City Mare, Tenor of Terror. You know, we're going in for them all. And the hope is that with Yordle in arms, we can, you know, go wide enough, give everything +4/+4, and just absolutely smack our opponent down. Maybe even Relentless Pursuit on the same turn. Obviously, it's similar to the other Poppy deck that we saw, but built a bit different with Tristana. and I think it could be okay. If you like Tristana, I think this is probably, sort of the best way to build it, with Poppy to go in aggressive, use Yordle and Arms, and just smack your opponent and kill them. So here's a deck that I really enjoyed building, and that was a Catalogue of Regrets deck. So Catalogue of Regrets is a 4-mana landmark, round start, create in hand, a fleeting copy of a non-fleeting spell you cast last round. And essentially what the idea of this deck is okay, what if we played a bunch of small, kind of cheap spells that target things, get Ezreal leveled up, keep using the fleeting, free cards that we get from Catalogue of Regrets, slowly chip our opponent down with stuff like Ballistic Bot, which also gets the augment off of Catalogue of Regrets, and Doom Beast, obviously, to just, because this card is nuts, slap in one Ledros, slap in Senna. You might be a bit surprised, you might be like, okay, I mean, I guess you get a Darkness, but actually, this is the deck I feel like we can make the most of Senna's leveled up form. Senna's level up form will make our spells all cost 1 less, essentially, and so all of these spells, or a lot of them at least, that would cost 1 less, all of a sudden are, a lot better. And especially when we use Catalogue of Regrets and they cost 1 less, both, the fleeting version now also costs 1 less, that feels pretty good. And so we have a bunch of draw cards, like Time Trick and Unto Dusk, and we have Rummage and obviously Go Hard as well, still with that same Senna synergy that we had before. And yeah, this deck I think is going to be a lot of fun to toy around with. Obviously you want to find the Catalogue of Regrets early on. You use a bunch of your spells and just go a bit crazy towards the end of the game with Ezreal, Catalogue of Regrets, and just a ton of spells to use. And then finally we have Taliyah Ziggs. Now, why Taliyah and why not Xerath? All you Xerath mains or Xerath fans out there are frowning at me going, why no Xerath in this list? Well, essentially it's, as I said in the Ziggs reveal, that they seem to be playing at very different speeds. Ziggs seems to be a pretty aggressive champion all in all. And I think, that this is the kind of deck where you want to be winning on turn 6 or something. And I don't think that Xerath really plays into that at all. I think Xerath is much more suited to the Sundisk tempo, which is much more of a winning on turns 9 kind of deck. He's much more controlly in his build, and Ziggs is very, to me, quite aggressive in his build. So what we've gone for instead is essentially just using, all of the cheap little landmark cards that we got, like Chemist and obviously Ancient Preparations, Explosive Minefield, Obelisk of Power, buffing up our units, going crazy with these little landmarks, using Rockhopper, and essentially getting Waste Walker to be a stupidly big card very quickly, potentially, with Unraveled Earth in particular. That can happen very quickly. Desert Naturalist to destroy our landmarks and get a 5/4 as well. And you're starting to see that, yeah, we're just going to start pushing a lot of damage pretty quickly. And we also have one Herald of the Magus as well to give our champions that potential buff and overwhelm, which of course works really well with Taliyah and Ziggs, really, because they both do damage to the units that are blocking them, and then to the enemy nexus. And so I feel like these two, even though Taliyah doesn't necessarily have the best things to copy, we're actually, for probably the first time in Taliyah's history, playing more for her sort of level up version. Now that we don't need a landmark on the board anymore with Taliyah's level up, we can just, use her ability to deal more damage to face, like leveled up Ziggs does, and I expect Ziggs to level up really quite quickly in this kind of list. And Taliyah, to level up really quite quickly again in this kind of list, because we have a ton of cheap landmarks. And I feel like this list is just going to be a lot of fun to go and just destroy your opponents with. We haven't really seen a tempo aggro landmark kind of deck before. We've seen kind of combo landmark with the Frozen Thralls, but not this fast. And I do think that this could be a pretty fast deck indeed. So those are all of the 10 decks for you to go and enjoy tomorrow. As I said, links always down in the description below, so take a look at them if any of them spoke to you, any of these decks. And I will be playing at least one of them on stream at some point tomorrow when the cards come out. So please leave a like and a comment for what decks you enjoy, what maybe changes you would do, you know, to some of these decks, because of course they won't end up being perfect. None of them are. And so, yes, I will see you tomorrow with, you know, the enjoyment of Bandle City at our fingertips. And so thank you so much for watching and have a really nice day.